Hello, everyone, and welcome to Inform New Hampshire. My name is Dean Kern. This is Richie Merritt to my right, my co-host. We are broadcasting from Manchester Cable Television, Channel 23, every Monday evening, Thursday morning, and on the weekends, Saturday and Sunday. We also have a YouTube channel, Inform New Hampshire, and a Facebook page, Inform New Hampshire. We'd invite you to go by and look at that, like us, and subscribe if you will. And Richie and I are state coordinators for National Liberty Alliance. We believe that National Liberty Alliance has a solution to America's problems, and that solution is the restoration of the common law grand juries. And the NLA, National Liberty Alliance, has constituted the common law grand juries in all 3,133 counties in our country. And the purpose of the common law grand jury is for we the people to have a tool by which we can meet in secret and investigate what's happening within our government organizations so that we can hold them accountable and so that we can stem the tide of government overreach, which seems to happen continually over time if there is no checks and balances, which we can say at this point there are no checks and balances. So that particular common law grand jury is sort of a fourth branch of government, but is owned by we the people. It is one of our natural rights. It originally started with the Magna Carta back in 1212, I believe. 1215. And it is an institution that was always part of our country and our processes in managing our government, we the people managing our government. However, that was taken from us in 1946 through a footnote in a legal proceeding, and they declared it obsolete. And that was a dark day for us in American history, and it was our responsibility to keep control of our government, and we didn't do it. We were asleep, and they usurped that privilege from us. So we no longer have it, and we want to restore it. And that's what Richie and I are committed to. We also are here just to bring news and information that the mainstream media will not talk to you about. So today we're going to talk about a few things, but first Richie's going to talk a little bit about Jerry DeLamus, who was a political prisoner for having showed up out at the Bundy Ranch 2 years ago, and the feds came and raided his home and took him, and under SWAT team style attack on his private property, his home, when his wife was there, Susan DeLamus, who is a state rep for New Hampshire. So it is a tragedy. There was no due process for Jerry, and he's being held out in Nevada right now as a political prisoner. So, Rich, you want to say something about that?
I do, but before I get to that, because a few things that Dean was talking about, I wanted to get in touch with. The common law grand jury was stolen from us, the people. I'm getting it back because it belongs to me and you, so I'm going after it. I hope you join me and Dean in our efforts to get it back. Also, there have been notices through the National Liberty Alliance, but it's more specifically the unified United States Common Law Grand Jury. We've sent out papers to every governor, every attorney general, every district attorney, every commissioner, every sheriff, the House, the Senate, in every state in the nation. Everyone knows that we're on to them as to the unlawfulness and the corruption. Hopefully they'll get smart, because their children and grandchildren have to live in this world too. So I sincerely hope that they come to their senses and start turning things around, but that's their call to make. I have to do what I have to do, Dean has to do what he has to do, and they have to do what they have to do. So we'll see what happens with it. In terms of Jerry, I feel as bad about Jerry DeLamus as I do about Lavoy Finicum, who was killed out in Oregon by allegedly state troopers. I don't know who pulled the trigger, if it was state troopers. Yeah, he was murdered. It was either state troopers or FBI. I'm not sure who the trigger men were, but he was shot several times, and he had his hands up. It was clear on the video. And I don't know, whoever conducted the investigation determined that the shooting was okay. Well, just like that, the shooting was not okay, nor was the arrest of Jerry DeLamus for exercising his constitutionally protected rights to speak freely, exercise the freedom of the press, which he did with a video camera, and to join a militia, which is guaranteed in the Constitution under the Second Amendment. So with all of that, I'd like to ask people to reach out to Jerry and his wife, Susan. And if it's at all possible, I know the economy's getting worse and worse, it seems like, but if you can donate any money to help with their legal fund, I'd appreciate you doing that. You can go to www.patriotjerry.com. And like I say, give whatever you can, $5, $10, $1, whatever you can give. I'm sure they'd appreciate it. So thank you for that. And three of the things, that we're going to talk about today, three of my favorite subjects: banks, the bar, and the IRS. Three things the world could live without. And we'll start off by the banks. The central banks I'm talking about now, not your corner bank necessarily. The central banks. It started out when our country first started. They were granted a license to operate, and it was called the Bank of the United States. I'm using the word bus. When Andrew Jackson came along, he fought them, knowing full well that central banks were going to hurt this country, or at least do some damage to it. He was ahead of his time. And I've heard people like, I'll mention him, Glenn Beck, who said he didn't like Andrew Jackson because he was a racist, because he didn't like Indians. I don't know that he was a racist or he wasn't a racist, but times were different back in 1830. I'll give the man the benefit of the doubt. I've read some horrifying stories of what Indians did to white people and what white people did to Indians. So it was pretty bad. But one of the things that they asked Andrew Jackson on his deathbed was, what do you feel most proud of? And he said, I killed the banks. And he did. Up until 1913. In 1913...
Richie, can I just say one thing
yeah,
there?
Sure.
It's interesting that you say that about Andrew Jackson on his deathbed, because it was Teddy Roosevelt on his deathbed who said that the worst thing that he had done was he had empowered the banks. Isn't that correct? Something like that.
I'm not sure how... Yeah, he did mention the banks. Honestly, I don't know what the...
Or was it
the
Wilson?
exact wording.
Maybe it was Wilson. It was Wilson.
Oh, it was. You're right.
Wilson, yeah. Got my
no.
presidents mixed up.
I'm trying to think now if it was Wilson or Hoover.
No, because Hoover...
Woodrow Wilson, you're right.
Woodrow Wilson,
Woodrow
yeah.
Wilson, yeah.
He did.
Okay. Anyway, in 1913, the banks got back in. They passed, this was at midnight, I think a couple days before Christmas or some ridiculous thing. There were probably 3 or 4 senators in the chamber. They passed the Federal Reserve Act. And the way the Federal Reserve Act works, and I'll try to illustrate it with Uncle Sam over here, and maybe he can help out, and we'll show you basically how it works and how it destroys us. So if you'll take it
Right.
up.
Pay attention. I'm Uncle Sam. I'm the United States government. So, hi, Richie. You're a bank, and we need a currency, but we don't want you. But it
Excuse
seems
me,
like
Uncle. I prefer to be called Federal Reserve.
Federal Reserve. All right. So we'll call you Federal Reserve, even though you're a privately owned corporation of international bankers. We'd like to have our own bank, and we don't want you in here. But it seems like we're being pressured. So we're going to need some currency, some money. Now that you've signed on to be our bank, we need some money in circulation. Can you give us some money?
Are you suggesting that because I'm a privately owned bank, and because Congress gave me this right, even though they don't have the right to do it
No, they don't.
under Article 1, Section 8, are you suggesting that there's something wrong with this?
I am.
Oh, okay. Well, how much money do
But
you
I'm
need?
not allowed to talk about it, so let's move forward.
How much money do you need, Uncle Sam?
Well, it's 1913, so let's start out for this first month. Let's go with $1 million. We need $1 million.
I just happen to have $1 million right here. Federal Reserve notes, here you go. There's $1 million.
That's beautiful. So we have $1 million to circulate. Thank
Yes,
you.
No problem. Oh, look at the time. 30 days have gone by. The loan is due. Do you have that $1 million, Uncle Sam?
Well, I still do have the $1 million, yes.
Oh, you owe me $1 million.
So this was a debt note. I got to pay you back?
Absolutely. That was the
Okay.
agreement.
All right, here's your $1 million.
Wait a minute. There was 6% interest on this $1 million.
6%.
Yeah, you got to pay me 6%.
How am I going to pay you 6%? And with what?
Well, do you want me to print some more money for you so you can pay me the interest?
I'm going to need some more money if I'm going to pay you 6%, yeah.
Okay, so I'll print you some more money. Here's another $1 million, but you still owe me $1 million. I mean, the interest on that.
So
Plus, Another million.
6%? I don't want to see me tear that up. All right, so 6%, a couple coins.
6% of a million isn't a couple coins. However,
So this is weird
this is a
because
great opportunity for...
next month I'm going to owe you even more, right?
Exactly.
So how am I going to be paying you that interest when there's not even that much money in circulation?
Well, Uncle Sam, I'll tell you, but don't share this with the people.
Yep.
You're never going to catch up.
So we're always going to be in
I'm always going
debt.
to print money, and you're always going to pay me interest. But if I pay, even if I print more money, I'm printing it for you, so I'm charging it. If I charge you interest, it's a never-ending bet. Where do you think that 19 trillion in debt comes from?
That sounds a lot like a Ponzi scheme or a pyramid scheme.
No.
Come on now. Think about
The
it.
Federal Reserve Bank would never do that to you, Uncle Sam. Come on.
Who is the beneficiary of this system?
I would say, yeah, probably the Federal Reserve.
Yep.
Me.
Yep. So we the people are
But
getting
this
ripped
is,
off.
hey, it's a free enterprise system. There's nothing wrong with
So
making
you're
money.
charging a 6% for every one of these that costs you a penny or two to make?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Plus the dollar itself
What's
is a
wrong with
debt?
that?
I'd say that's a form of...
Now look at every war that's ever been started, I started because I wanted to make money for me and my people. And that war benefited you
How
because
so?
you became a very strong nation. People around the world fear you now, and it's all because of me.
So we have you to thank for the wars?
Absolutely.
All right. Am I supposed to appreciate that?
Well, you don't want people coming over here and bombing you and your children, right? We took it to them.
How do I know you're not going to do the same thing with China?
You don't.
Suckers. All right, Richie.
That's, and I want my $1 million back. That's the deal. Unfortunately, they keep printing money, and we have to pay the interest on it. That's the whole deal in a nutshell. And that doesn't even count the scamming. The fractionalized banking system says they take $10, we'll use small figures here, and they only have to keep $1 in reserve, and they can loan out the other $9. But instead of loaning out the other $9, they loan out $99 because it's a fractionalized system. They don't even physically have the money. But here, you want money? We'll give you money. We'll give you money. We'll give you money. They'll loan out 100 times without physically having the money. All they do is take digits from their computer and put them into your account. You don't even see the money. And this money is fiat currency. It's counterfeit. Searching for the word. Counterfeit currency. It's garbage. That's why we're in the shape we're in today.
Isn't there one of our presidents in our recent past that started to print money from our treasury, which is legal tender, legal money? And then what? They shot him in the head in public and did away with him?
Well, they did that to Lincoln. They also did it to Kennedy. They killed him because he was, there was a lot of different issues there, but he gave an order to the Treasury to print money.
Yep.
Not Federal Reserve notes, I'm sorry, Treasury notes, as opposed to Treasury bills, I'm sorry, as opposed to Federal Reserve notes. And,
So let me ask you this, Richie. If I'm taking that $1 million from you to put into circulation, and you're putting me in debt for that $1 million plus 6%, wouldn't it be beneficial for me to print my own money with the treasury bill, as you say, put that money into circulation at no cost to myself except for a few pennies to print it, and wouldn't my wealth grow much faster without the debt?
Wait a minute. You're dragging the law into this?
Yes.
Just because you have the right to do it?
Yes.
Come on. You already signed it over to me. And besides, I have other banks all around the world, so we can do it better than you can.
How long of a contract did you get to own our currency, run our currency?
That's a good question. Originally, it was 30 years, but I don't know what it is now.
Yeah.
I didn't check into that. It doesn't matter because whatever it is, if it's a year or 100 years, it's illegal, and we should be terminating it.
Yep. All right. So that's the Fed.
Now, you want to talk about the bar. The bar is one of my favorite subjects. I have a lot of friends that are lawyers, or at least people that I used to know are lawyers, and I like them, they're good people and everything else, but the bar runs our courts today, and in the Constitution for the United States, which we have here, it doesn't say anything about lawyers or attorneys, and it doesn't mention the bar at all. And the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. So I question why the bar is running our courts. A lawyer takes a bar exam. Bar, by the way, stands for British Accreditation Registry. So our attorneys are licensed by the bar. I don't care if it's the American bar or the bar, it doesn't matter, it's a bar. It's the British Accreditation Registry. They're licensed by another country, the same country we tried to get away from 240 years ago, which to me is a little suspect if nothing else, but you can make up your own mind on that thing. The bar licenses these attorneys, and they can disbar these attorneys. Now, under the law, being lawful, you don't need a license to practice law anywhere in the United States, under the Constitution, under common law. However, they've got, and by the way, this is key. Under common law, if you take somebody to court, you don't need an attorney. I could sue Dean in a courtroom, and I don't need an attorney to do it. And when if they say, all right, Richie, we're going to award you $15,000 damages for what Dean did, that money goes to me. Attorney doesn't get a dime. Wait a minute. That would mean that attorneys are in this for the money. Yeah, there's money to be made, huh? It's got nothing to do with justice.
Sure doesn't.
It doesn't sound like it to me.
No, and to make it matters even worse, if you and I were in a conflict and you were suing me for money, you would do so under common law in a common law court, which is the law of the land, which is also the United States Constitution is a common law document, which puts us all in common law. Common law is common sense. And a common law court, first of all, originally was a show. And it's a show where people can show up and present their case, and you have multiple people witnessing to decide what's the truth here and what's the justice that needs to be served. So it can be very simple. But what has happened is that the Bar Association has made it extremely complicated. They use a different language called legalese, and they have different dictionaries for that language. And they changed the jurisdiction, meaning that it's no longer you and I are under the common law land jurisdiction. When we walk into a courtroom, they secretly put us into Admiralty or maritime jurisdiction, which is the law of the sea, which is very different. And what happens is they create every one of their federal governments, state governments, they create all these rules and regulations called statutes and codes, and those rules and regulations, technically speaking, are designed to govern the employees of the government or the military. Those are not statutes and codes that should be applied to we the people on the land. However, through time, we have been bamboozled into assuming that they know what they're doing, and we are now subject to all those codes by force of a gun. So we are suckers, and we are suckers because we are ignorant, and we are ignorant because we have been remiss or lazy in managing our government. So here we are, 200 and some odd years later in our country, being completely controlled, enslaved by a system that cares nothing about us and everything about taking our money. There's much more to the rabbit hole goes much deeper in what's happening, and they have securitized us, and they have a straw man for each of us, which is your all caps name. If you look at your license, it's written in all capital letters because that is a corporation according to the government, and they are using that corporation to manage you, to fine you, and to usurp your wealth. And they're very sophisticated at it, and they're loving it. They love it because they get rich off it. So
yeah, let me
go ahead.
You can check out. There's a good video out there on YouTube. Season of Treason. Kurt Kellenbach, who talks about this a lot. It's Kellenback, Kurt, Kurt. And he does an excellent job of this. But what Dean was talking about with the statutes, everybody thinks that the government's allowed to make statutes, but they're only allowed to make statutes based on what's in Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution. They cannot make any statutes regulating the behavior of people. And a good example of that is, I don't need a law. I don't need to know about some law, and I don't even know what it is anyway, that says you can't murder somebody. I know it's wrong. We don't do it to one, most of us don't do it to one another. We know it's wrong. You don't go out there and kill somebody. It's against the laws of nature. It's against the laws of God, so you don't do it. You don't rob somebody. I don't go steal your pocketbook or if you have money laying around in your house and you just don't do things like that. You don't need laws to do that. It's common sense. But what you don't need is a statute, that says when you come into a stop sign and you roll through it and a cop pulls you over and he says, Jesus, why'd you do that? I saw you. You didn't come to a complete stop. Well, the sun isn't going to spin on its axis, or the earth isn't going to spin. Nothing's going to happen right because you went through that stop sign. A cop could do it and everything would be fine, but you can't do it. Some of the things that are out there are ridiculous, and they're designed to generate money through the Bar Association. Look at these attorneys go in and everything's about, I'm going to take your kid. They make money off of the CPS and all this garbage. They talk about, we're going to take your house. They're making money off of that, and they bleed you dry. Sometimes I wonder these people don't have any conscience at all. And to sit there and say common law doesn't exist, that's old, that's archaic. No, it isn't old. It's our law. And I don't care personally if it's 3,000 years old. It's our law. I'm fighting for it. Peacefully and lawfully, I'm fighting for it. And I'm not going to stop until we win. Because the people deserve better than what they're getting by the corrupt government, especially the bar.
We don't have a lot of time left, but there is one more subject we wanted to talk about, and it's another privately owned corporation. It's actually owned by the same international bankers who set up the currency, because when they set up the currency and they started implementing taxation, they needed a enforcement agency to collect those taxes. We call that what?
No, well, they did the IRS, by the way. But they didn't start taxation. They started taxation on your income.
Right.
And they were calling it, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. They were taxing your wages or your compensation, and they were calling it income. Income has nothing to do with your wages or compensation. Nothing whatsoever. But they started doing it. And what bothers me most about the IRS now is they'll come kick your door in and seize your assets without due process of law. And, I'm not advocating this at all, but anybody that kicks your door in should be shot. I don't care if they got a badge on or not. Badge doesn't give them the authority to do that. And besides, the IRS is not a police organization. Who gave them the authority to do it? Or the not the NLA, the BLM or any of these other organizations that are doing it. But the IRS is ridiculous because you don't have to file an income tax on your wages. You do have to file an income tax on any money you've made through corporate earnings, but not on your wages or your compensation. You give your employer 40 hours worth of work, they give you 40 hours worth of pay, whatever you agreed on. Where's the government come into play on that? You're not utilizing any service of the government. It's not like buying a gallon of gas. You're giving your time for money to your employer. Anyway, I got a pet peeve with that anyway. And I have not yet seen any lawyer or accountant show me the law that says you have to pay a tax on your wages or compensation. They'll show you you have to pay on your income all day long, but not on your wages or compensation. So it's garbage. And I'm not advocating anybody stop paying, because they will come down and kick your door in. But you should start learning about the law.
One of the most fundamental rights that we have is property rights, and the reason that it's one of the most fundamental rights is because it is when you have your body as your property, or your soul or your person as your property, that is the most fundamental property right you could have, ownership of yourself and your body, and nobody else can own that without violating your property rights. So when you when you go out and you work to collect products or income or something like that, you're doing that with your own resources called your body, your mind, your soul. And for someone to say that they are going to take some of what you earned for yourself at the point of a gun, and make sure you understand that the IRS points guns at people, so does everyone else that collects taxes. But that's a violation of your fundamental right to your own productivity. And that's what the government is engaging in.
They can't tax your time.
And if you're wondering why they can do that and get away with it when the Constitution it entirely restricts them from doing that, it's because they're not operating under the Constitution of the United States. They're not operating under the Constitution for the United States. They're operating as a privately owned corporation, pretending to be the government when really they're a corporation just providing some government services. But they do whatever they want. They make the rules the way they want, and they enslave you. They take your money. They throw a few pennies at you, and then they hide the rest of it in what's called a CAFR, Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. Over $60 trillion in 180,000 plus government, privately owned corporations spread out through the United States. Every municipality is a privately owned corporation. And they have stolen your future, they've stolen your wealth, and they are hiding it from you. And they continue to do so unabated, simply because you and I have not stood up to our government. And we need to do it. We need to wake up. We need to pass this on, spread the word, let people know what's going on. We've got to educate ourselves and come alive. The human spirit's got to come alive and protect itself. That's all, because they're going to keep coming after us if we don't.
Just one other thing in that regard. The biggest enemy we have in America is ignorance of the American people. Learn the Constitution. I promise you, you will understand what's going on if you read that document. And you can look at Publius, Publius, Huldah, Huldah. She's on YouTube. Phenomenal lady. I can't say enough about her, talking about the Constitution. And Chris Ann Hall is another one, a constitutional attorney. They're both attorneys. And generally, I don't recommend attorneys to talk about the law or the Constitution, but these two women are phenomenal. Check them out and learn. That's what's going to combat and get rid of the corruption in this country, is for all of us to learn.
So once again, as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, Richie and I are state coordinators for National Liberty Alliance. Richie and I have weekly meetings here in Manchester. Anyone is welcome. Just look it up you can email us. The email's on the TV screen there. And you can also find those meetings scheduled on the National Liberty Alliance website. There's also a civics course on the National Liberty Alliance website, and it is 100 and some hours course. It's fantastic. It would teach you everything that would wake you up to the truth about what's going on in this country.
Children.
Yep, or your children, yep.
Great for kids.
So Richie and I appreciate you tuning in. We hope that you'll tune in again every week, and we look forward to next week's show. So thank you.
Have a good night.
Good night.